Mr. President, we welcome you to this program, A Conversation with the President. And we have with us three journalists who are in the media every day, so they have a pulse on what's going on the streets and in the communities out there. And so we just wanted to pose some questions to you as President about the situation in the country and current affairs and get your views on pressing issues. So we thank you and we welcome you.
Thanks. I'm glad to share this moment with you.
Thank you. And our first question will be from Alexis Rodney. Go ahead, Alexis.
Okay, Mr. President. Could you give the government's or the PPP's position from a historical background, I would say, on the issue of racism? And could you at the same time respond to APNU AFC's Moses Nagamutu's promise to deliver some 11,000 Indian votes to the new coalition?
All right. I would say that the PPP was founded as a national party, and it has remained a national party since then. It has never had any program, any policy that favors one race at the expense of another. We do have a program to try to give some priority to the native Amerindian community that community has been left back far away by colonialism and by the last PNC regime. And in order to help them to catch up with the same level of the state, a lot more investment and attention is being paid in those areas. But there's no policy that you can identify, anyone can identify, that the PPP has any policy in race. And not only in policy, but in practice. You know, in our history in the 1960s in particular, 61 to 64, we had quite a bit of racial clashes in our country. And even in those circumstances, our party came out in the fight against racism. In fact, the party had a minor split after the 1964 elections, because there was a body of views of some people that the party should continue to fight against the PNC regime that had taken a line with colonialism, taken the side of colonialism. But Dr. Jagan had concluded by then that our independence struggle had deteriorated into racial clashes, and if we had taken that path, it would have been much more difficult to bring back racial and national unity in our society. And it's reflected in his writings in January of 1965, weeks after he came out of government. He wrote an article to the PPP supporters in which he condemned racism completely, and which he pointed out that anyone who practices racism is not only an enemy of the country, but an enemy to themselves. And in April of the same year, in the Thunder, he again wrote an article, came out forcefully against racism. Now that is the party I came from. That is the party that I have been General Secretary for quite a while, almost 16 years as General Secretary of the PPP. That is the tradition I follow. That is the direction that we follow, that our party, as a national party, a party of all the people of Guyana, are fighting for the betterment of working people and for living standards in our society. The opposition parties like to say that they are different and they are not race. But as you mentioned, the fact that Nagamutu could say that he would deliver 13% of the Indian votes to Granger, to the APNU, clearly shows that they have ethnic counting in their political calculations. That while they talk one thing, they practice something else. We saw that at the last elections too, where the messages were different to the different communities that they went to. And that policy continues to be the same. And the APNU is doing the same thing now. We're beginning to see signs of that. And it's very clear that the opposition is not getting the kind of traction that they wanted to get from their coalition. They are, they are, they are in fact losing grounds, and they don't have any record to compare to ours. They're 28 years in government that they don't like to talk about. Their 28 years in government was characterized by the deterioration of the social and economic and the economy of our country. They have made us find words that we never had before. Words like berry, when people are suffering from extreme malnutrition. And this is what this is what they record. So if they can't bring a record to confront us, if they can't bring a record that they could be elected on, then they have to find something in which they will try to destroy our achievements. And it is becoming clear that they're beginning to resort to racism in that regard, to try to play the racial card. That is how I see it, that they're doing at this stage that we are in.
So, Mr. President, how would you go about convincing the electorate that the government is against racism?
I think the electorate, my own view, the electorate are clever enough to see through a lot of this ploy. Just to point out to them that we have built and refurbished since we got in office more than 1,000 schools, and it wasn't done only where PPP supporters lived. It was done right across the length and breadth of Guyana, wherever it was needed. It was a question of need. Mm-hmm. We have built or refurbished hospitals in every single region of the country, not only where PPP won, but that clearly shows that our policy goes right across the board. When we give $10,000 to parents for every child they had in public schools, from kindergarten to secondary school, we didn't ask the parents if they were PPP, PNC, or what ethnic group they came from. We helped the parents to try to keep the kids in school. So we can point, they cannot point to a single policy that we have to say that we practice racism. And at the same time, we can point to our own actions to show that our actions, when we built roads in communities that are in need of roads, mm-hmm. not in necessarily, of course we built roads in PPP support areas, but also in other parts of our country as well. So very clearly the evidence is there, clearly there, to show that is not so.
But the perception persists. I guess it's coming from people who promote views that the government and the PPP are practicing racism. There are people who are peddling those views. And how do you propose to deal with that? Because it's an issue that, in your view, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But there are people saying that it exists.
But that's why we got to constantly fight. This is more an invention in the media and by the opposition elements and the people in the opposition media, in which they try to repeat these false accusations in the hope that some of them will stick. That is what they have been trying to do. So we have to counter that by going to the reality, by the facts. We can only depend on the truth and the facts. That is what we have to depend on to show people what we have done right across this country.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I could go back to what you
but
said.
if I may add, this is a theoretical point on this question of racism. Racism itself has an economic base. In every country where racism is practiced, there is an economic reason, an economic base for that. Mm. In South Africa, it was for the whites in South Africa to have a high standard of living at the expense of the black and non-white people. Even in the United States, in the period of segregation, it was for the same reason, to give the whites a higher standard of living at the expense of blacks and and non-white people in those society. In this country, I want to say that all the people of our country more or less live in a general, speaking generally, people got more or less the same standard of living. There's no one that can point that one ethnic group is living at a higher level at the expense of another ethnic group in our society. So that's the theoretical point I would like to make to you at this time.
If I could take you back to what you were saying about the race card being played as a distraction. Another current issue that's occupying people's attention right now is the shooting of Mr. Ewing in Diamond. How do you respond to that incident being used to feed political perceptions?
Well, I just addressed the police conference, and I made the point, first of all, I would like to condemn that. Whoever did that, for whatever reason, I would like to condemn it forthright and take the opportunity to extend to the family and friends my deepest sympathy and condolences on this loss. But the question that should be asked in this case is who benefits from something like this? I can tell you very clearly that neither the government nor the PPP and PPP Civic has anything to gain by this. Mr. Crummy Wing was not a threat to the government, to the party, or any interest of the PPP. He was no threat at all. We have absolutely nothing to gain by that. I've seen what you've said. I've seen some people posting this was a political assassination. I will repeat what I told the police conference I said at the police conference just now. If anyone is saying that, we must assume that they have evidence. If they do have evidence, they should go to the police and give information. If they do not have any evidence of this, then what they're doing is trying to instigate problems in our society, right? And they should desist. If they're claiming on the one hand that they want to have ethnic security and so forth in our society, they should desist from instigating violence and creating perception of who did this for what purpose. We have absolutely nothing to gain. I don't know if any other forces got things to gain by this. But I can say that Mr. Crummy Wing was absolutely no threat to the PPP nor the government.
Right, now you mentioned security and your address at the police conference this morning. If we could shift a little to what is being done to improve citizen security, because the death of Mr. Ewing has raised concerns. What is being done to address citizen security, and what is the outlook moving forward?
Well, my whole speech today was more or less focused on that issue, because you know that this report that came out from LAPOP, the Latin American, said that in Guyana the police force got the lowest level of confidence, and therefore we have to turn that around, that perception around. Of course, the police force itself, in the report this morning, the commissioner pointed out to several areas that they have had gains. But at the same time, we know that this perception persists and is there. And therefore, it has to be dealt with. And many of the things we have to deal with. One, the government has been working very hard to increase their capacity by giving more vehicles. We have built a forensic laboratory there now. We have a floating base to deal with crimes on the high seas, piracy and so forth. We have trained a new SWAT team. We have another new SWAT team in place. We have we are using more technology, lights. We're putting more and more lights in the communities. In fact, that's a big demand in many communities for more lights to try to detect crime. And we have also been putting cameras in the different locations to try to identify and try to also stop and prevent people from committing these type of crimes. But I also spoke about the need for the police to be more responsive. The 9/11 system has to work. The time from that you call a police out to the time they arrive at the scene must be reduced substantially to help us catch criminals, to help us prevent innocent people from being injured, so when the police can do these, move very quickly on the scene, and to serve as a prevention method. Because when criminals know that they could be caught, that there will be quick reaction from the police to them, and the possibility and the probability of them being caught increases, then that will serve as a deterrent to people trying to commit crime. So we are trying to equip the police with all the means necessary to fight crime and to keep our country safe, so that our people can carry on with their productive labor and productive work to develop themselves.
In the same lane, you mentioned efforts and policies and programs that are being advanced by your government in addition to the police response. But I was wondering if you could comment a little bit on the political will. These three factors that would contribute to improving citizen security.
Well, that's a good point that you've raised there. That let me just also comment that the oppositions have been lambasting the police for a long time, attacking the police, sometimes very unjustifiable. And sometimes they have been taking steps themselves to try to limit the police from taking actions. For instance, the fact that they have not supported the anti-money laundering and the countering of the financing of terrorism bill. On 2 occasions they voted against it. What does that mean? What was that bill intended to do? The bill was intended to bring our legislation up with the rest of the world, to give the authority of the police not only to arrest these people when they are committing crime and if they are convicted, but for them to have their property confiscated, the ill-gotten gains that they would have made. The fact that they have voted against this on 2 occasions can very well be interpreted as a support for criminal elements, for those who make money from drug trade, trafficking in persons, and other such type of activities. And they have also taken a choice, they made a choice in putting our country at danger, because if our financial sector is blacklisted, it means our whole economy can suffer, because your financial sector is at the heart of your economy. And if your heart goes bad, well, you know, it has implications for your whole body. The same way, if your financial sector is affected, your whole economy would be affected. And people will suffer. But the opposition, by voting on 2 occasions against this anti-money laundering bill, has taken a side on this matter, and yet they continue to attack the police force while they have not shown any evidence of trying to support any efforts or work or give the police the tools that they can give the police the tools to fight these type of crimes. But more than that, they have a IDB $15 million US dollars assistance to enhance security, citizen security. The opposition is calling on the IDB not to give that grant. Now, how could people or political parties say that they're against crime and trying to take away resources or prevent resources from reaching the main organization that you have to fight against crime and criminals within our society? So, yes, I would say that all of us got a role to play to try to fight and bring down crime. And we can decide if we want to be constructive and assist the police in their crime-fighting effort. And this morning, I again insisted on and demanded from the police the highest level of professionalism. And that is all I ask them. I don't ask them who they vote for or who they don't vote for, but I ask for professionalism from the force. But we see an opposition that seems determined to deprive the force of resources to fight crimes and criminals within our society.
Right, in line with what you said there, that there can be no taking of sides in the effort to advance and ensure citizen security. The police themselves have come in for major flack, giving their own shortcomings. What are your comments on this? given that you've called for the highest level of professionalism?
Well, I think once it is justifiable, if the criticism against the police is justifiable, I have no problems. I told you just now, one of the big issues that people have, it's the response time of the police. And that is a clear, justifiable criticism, and that is something that has to be corrected. So once these things, or you'll find maybe some bad apples in the police force who might be taking bribes and so forth, and you have that kind of criticism, those are justifiable types of criticism. But to take position to deprive them, because the vast majority of police officers in our society are decent people who are putting their life on their line and who are fighting crimes every day. So, but when you're trying to deprive them of the resources to discharge their constitutional functions, then you want to know if these people are really serious about citizen security in Guyana.
Stacey?
Yes, Mr. President, it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thanks.
Coming off of crime and security and some of the measures that your government would be putting in place for that, I would want to turn your attention to economic stability. What are some of the focus points of your government to ensure the continued economic stability of Guyana?
Well, part of the important in the whole question of the continuing progress of our economy and success of our economy is being able to have more and more investments in the society. Investments is what creates the job, it creates wealth, helps create the revenues in the society as a whole. And over the years, we have been having some very good investments. 2 new gold mines, large gold mines, are expected to begin before the end of the year. Only yesterday, I went to Kurubuka in Region 10 to open up the Upper Borbis River area, to open a new bauxite mine owned by Rusal there. There they employ more than 500 persons, between 500 and 600 persons are employed there because of that investment that they have made. There were other investments that we were going to have in our society that the opposition prevented from coming. The most notable one, the one I speak about very often, the one because I feel so strongly about it, is the Amila Fall hydroelectricity project, where the opposition prevented that investment from being made by the Blackstone company. Because, you know, with cheap electricity, we can not only bring down the light bill for people that they have, but we can also stimulate a strong manufacturing and industrial sector. We can have a strong agri-processing sector because with cheap electricity, all of which can help us to enhance the wealth of the people of our country and create a lot more jobs for people in a general sense. So if that project had come on, the very construction of it we would have had a lot of jobs, and after the construction of it, we had enormous benefits from that. You see the attacks that they're having against the Cherry Jagan International Airport, a very important project for tourists and tourism, development of tourism in our country, but they choose to attack this project. The third thing that they're attacking, the Marriott Hotel. And you know, the Marriott Hotel is, they're trying to discourage investors from making investment into the Marriott Hotel and slandering it with all kinds of slander, heaping slander on it to try to discourage investors from coming. However, we still had that investment. As we speak, there's drilling going on offshore in search for oil in our area here. SO is working there. So I think that very soon we can see ourselves as being an oil and gas producer in the world. We will be part of the OPEC countries in that regard. So therefore, I would say that there are many areas. We have to modernize our traditional sector. We have to put more money in sugar to ensure the viability of that. That's a very important industry, and we have to ensure its viability by putting more money into it. we have to look at new ideas. One of the ideas we wanted to do was to look at health tourism, where we were going to allow our citizens to make it affordable to our citizens to have the benefits from the development of science and technology, particularly in medicine, so that we can make affordable bypass surgeries, cancer treatment, dialysis treatment, etc., etc. But and we also wanted to set up the specialty hospital to do that, and at the same time to use that specialty hospital to create health tourism, because we have a big diaspora outside. The Caribbean got a big diaspora outside, where people can come here and also benefit from our operations here, and also that our country can earn money from that as well. So we have been doing quite a bit to try to expand the revenue stream of our country, so that we can continue to expand on and build on the social sector that we have been investing heavily on as well. So that is the general direction that we're going, trying to get more value added with more cheaper electricity from the bank, generally from the more cheaper electricity from investing in hydro, investing in alternative energies, and also to provide better jobs for people as a whole.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. President. And another area, there have been claims that there is favor among the investors. One set of investors are being favored more than the other set. Could you shed some light on that issue? What has been your government's approach in terms of the treatment of the various investors coming into Guyana?
We have one level playing field for all investors. We don't give one set of investors better conditions than another set of investors. We have only one. I think you're probably talking about the opposition attacks on Chinese investment, if I'm right. But there is no conditions, no benefits that we give to Chinese investors that we are not giving to investors from any other country, whether from the United States, Canada. Canada got a lot of investment in our society too. Then we have, or whether they're from Australia, which got some investment here as well. Whatever area, we give the same concessions. The same concession applies to all that comes here to have investment. So it's totally untrue. The attacks against the Chinese, I don't know why this attack, because the Chinese are now one of the most important developmental partners for many, many countries, for Latin America and the Caribbean. It is the Chinese investors that are bringing in more capital than probably any other country at this point in time. So I don't know if this attack on the Chinese fall into the general pattern of what I had to deal with over the last 3 years, to look at the opposition trying to frustrate any kind of developmental initiatives to prevent them from taking place. And this anti-Chinese attack by the opposition seems to be geared in that direction as well, to try to discourage Chinese investment in our society. That would be a very foolish thing to do at this point in time.
Now, you spoke about a level playing field for the international investors. What about, because there have been arguments that local investors do not get equal opportunities as the international. Would you say that is true? Well,
there is no local investors who will bring investment of the same size that a foreign investor will bring that would be discriminated against. None would, if they're bringing in an investment similar to some of the investments coming in by foreign capital, why should we discriminate against them? We have no reason to do that, right? But most of the very big investments that are coming in have come in from foreign investment so far.
And one last point before we move off of economic development. In terms of investors' confidence, despite all these criticisms and all of the negativity being peddled, how do you find investors' confidence in Guyana?
I think it's very high. If you look at what exists now in our country, you will see that there is an expansion and an increased investment. And a lot of the services are also expanding to the countryside. Banks are opening. I myself went to some of these openings. I can't go to all, but many I've gone to. Banks are opening at Rossignol on the Quarantine and the East Coast. In the Essequibo Coast, you have banks now and so forth. On the West Demerara, you have banks at Wiedenhoop and at Porica. In Lethem, you have 2 banks there as well, and other places banks are going. Other services are also following, going into the various areas. So which speaks about an expansion of investment by local and foreign people throughout the length and breadth of the country. And that is what we want. That is what we are encouraging, to try to help companies not only to invest in one area, but to have investment right across the board in different parts of our country.
Thank you. You talked about the economic stability and encouraging investment to ensure that we have more revenues to support social services. In the last couple of weeks, one particular area of social services, healthcare, has come under a lot of pressure. There has been comments by your administration regarding the capping of that medical assistance program. Can you comment on that?
Yes, I think I know what you're talking about. Some of the, yes, I had said to my party's executive and to the cabinet that this will be capped in the future, that this thing will be capped. It will not be allowed to have an unlimited charge on the Treasury. I'm planning to move to a more kind of insurance system, health insurance system, so that we can limit the exposure on the Treasury for many of these health benefits. But it's unfortunate that only some of the in the government were highlighted. But we spent millions of dollars to help people who are not supportive of our party, including the former President Desmond Hoyt, his wife, Winston Murray. We've given a lot of assistance to them as well. We've given assistance to Sheila Holder when they had their sickness. So we've given assistance right across the board. This is not something that has been limited for government people. We have, wherever people were in need of assistance, we gave them to. I mean, I saw they mentioned one judge, but we also give to other judges within the society. Why they only mention one judge that was given some assistance 4 or 5 years ago, and only recently we've given assistance to other judges to have medical checkup and medical expenses paid for them. So what is, as I said, I agree that we have to cap these things. I'm not arguing, I'm conceding that point, that these things cannot be unlimited. But I'm looking at the motive of those who promoted this and brought this to the fore, because I think they were trying to make a case that this is only for government people, but we have helped right across the board. We have helped people. Every day, every cabinet meeting, there are some people who seek assistance from us and that we help with medical bills.
You know, the criticism that you are getting, the administration is getting right now in talking about capping this medical assistance program is what are the parameters of how you cap this medical assistance program? Because you're saying that millions are spent on people who...
But this is a technical issue. I mean, I'll lay down the guidelines, the policy position of what we want to do. The working out the mechanisms will be people who, the technical people who will work it out and put this policy into operational form, which we will have to approve anyhow. But that will ensure these things. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else has a question?
There are still criticism, well, not criticisms, but questions are still being asked about the Venezuela-Guyana issue, and we haven't heard from you officially on this issue. So, yeah.
Well, you know, we still believe that our first engagement must be at the level of diplomacy, and we're working very hard at this level to deal with these issues. I think the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had made some statements on these matters. As you will appreciate, these are sensitive issues, and we believe our first line of defense is our diplomacy. Our diplomacy has been delivering for us over the years, and we would like to also ensure that this issue with Venezuela would be resolved at the level of over the table to talk about these matters. We feel that we have a very strong case. We feel that we are, so we think that we have a very good case, and we hope that this issue could be resolved, because we cannot allow our country to be stymied by issues of this nature, and therefore we have to continuously work towards resolving these issues that have cropped up more recently. I mean, relatively in terms of in the historical context, that these are relatively new things that have turned up that we have to deal with.
Okay. Mr. President, for the past 3 years you've been president, and you've said over and over that your work has been affected negatively by the state of play at Parliament. Could you paint a picture for us? If you had the majority and you were able, and the Parliament was supportive, and we had a creative leadership in the country and from parliamentary level, what would Guyana look like today if you could have been president as you wanted to be for the past 3 years?
Well, right now we would have been far advanced in the construction of the hydropower that we spoke about. That work would have been started. That would have had a big impact on our economy, because the investment was supposed to be about 800 million United States dollars, and that would have started to roll out. It would have had a big impact for growth and development. A lot of jobs would have been created, and a lot of communities would have benefited greatly. A lot more would have been done with the speed at which we do things, because we could have the anti-money laundering bill, which has a tendency to hold back our development. That would have been passed. We would not have been facing the whole issue of being blacklisted and have to go to Paris and to different places, Miami and so forth, to plead our case and try to ensure that our country is not blacklisted. So there are many other investments, like the airport investment. That would not have been a controversy. We could have gone ahead with much more confidence and much more alacrity on these things to work on them. And of course there are several others that we can look at, things that the government that the opposition had been cutting. Furthermore, many of the interior communities, like the Amerindian Development Fund, which was cut from the budget, this was funds to buy tractors and plows and help with transportation and so forth in the Amerindian communities to try to develop the village economy. All of those things would have been rolling out at a more regular and more rapid pace, and for us to have greater development within the society as a whole. So many of these things that have been would not have been controversial, and we could have moved with them at a much. And our country, I think we would have had a good possibility of growing about between 7 and 8% per annum, instead of the 4 and 5% that we have been growing over the last 3 years. Although that is commendable in the light of international situation that is not so favorable, and a local situation where there has been deliberate attempts to slow down development. The fact that we've had this type of growth is commendable, but it still robbed us about another 3 or so percentage point that we could have grown. That's my view on the issue.
So the opposition, in your view, slow down development?
Clearly, they have been anti-developmental. You talk about slowing down development. They have totally been anti-developmental, yes.
So there's an atmosphere, therefore, in the country where development cannot be fast-paced as it should be, as it could be.
It could have been much faster, yes.
So what is your, as president of the country, given the fact that it's a democratic society and we still have to take into consideration parliament and the other areas of government, what is your plan or strategy to deal with the situation in the country that is so poisonous? Especially, excuse me, Mr. President, especially the state media, like television and radio. These are entities that could be used to really tell the story of Guyana. What is your strategy to change the situation if it could be changed?
Well, first of all, I think we have to keep emphasizing what we have been doing. There's a setting in the media, not the state media, but in the media as a whole, that seems determined not to bring out the truth on what is taking place, and also, in fact, to go worse, to try to paint many of the projects that we have that can bring great benefits to our people, to try to discredit them. So I think we have to probably do much more to bring out all the facts about all of these investments and the possible impact that they will have on our society and how it will benefit all the people of our country. So that is one of the things that we have to constantly do. The other issue is clearly we have to win back our majority in the National Assembly. I had high hopes in 2011, 2012, end of 2011, 2012, when the joint opposition got the one-seat majority in the National Assembly, that this will make it conducive for us to meet and talk with each other and to find agreements. And those talks that we've had, and I've made every attempt to consult and to have talks with them, it was very limited success. And in fact, we had areas where we got agreements and we had them reneging on it. And then afterwards, they have been doing everything not to try to promote development, but to retard development by, we just talked about cutting budgets and so forth that they've done.
Okay, so
So the important thing is, right now, is that this past experience shows that for our country to go forward, we must have a majority government. And I hope that people would have seen this and seen how important that is and understand how much the opposition has slowed down the growth of this country. We could have, as I said, grown much faster. And hopefully at these elections, the PPP Civic will regain its majority and we can continue and accelerate the development of Guyana.
So let's look ahead to, say, 5 years of you being president, being able to govern as president, without being stymied by parliament or any internal force working against you. Including, and also maybe you could touch as well on this issue, which is the state of the media in general, because we have a situation where the media is absolutely free to say and do, people can say and do whatever they want. But do you think that freedom maybe is being abused, or is there some framework in place that you're thinking?
Without doubt it is being abused, and I think we need to probably look at what measures do we put in place, both from a legal point of view and from a moral point of view, to try to prevent people from distortions and downright lies in the media, and to deal with the abuses that have been taking place in the media, maybe to strengthen some of these laws. Some of these people are trying to whip up, incite racism, distort things and so forth, that those things must be dealt with. And we got to look at what measures would be used to deal with these things, what legal measures we will put in place to deal with these issues. If somebody persistently tries to create problems between the peoples of different origins from in our country, then I think maybe they don't deserve to have some of the media that they have. So we have to examine those things and see legally how these things could be worked into, and what are the best practices in other countries, what other countries use to prevent this type of abuse. Those things could be examined to see what could be implemented here. and also to study our situation to see what we can come up with that could be more homegrown to deal with these matters. So yes, I think that those are issues that we have to confront in the next government, because people don't have you have a right, but you don't have a right to incite violence. You don't have a right to preach racism and to practice racism in our society. People don't have that right, so we have to deal with those issues in the future. Generally, I would say in the next 5 years, we could have a very, very strong energy sector. Not only the Amida Falls, but we could become an energy exporter. We could also use various different forms of alternative energy to get better service for the people of our country. And we could really build a strong manufacturing sector I spoke about just now. But we can also look at agriculture. We have huge scope for diversification, bringing new crops. We can make coconut industry as big as the rice and sugar industry. We can bring soya beans, we can bring corn, many other things that we can bring. And with the energy supply, we can have a very strong agro-industrial development complex to move forward with. We also look at the cutting-edge issues. You know, when I was in India recently in my conversation with Prime Minister Modi, we agreed that we will establish here an ICT park, a modern ICT park that can very well be like the headquarters for the Caribbean and South America right here in Guyana. And that, with the use of more ICT, more modern technology, we can create quite a lot of jobs and quite a lot of economic energy could be created by using all of these new technology in our production and create more efficiency, etc., in our economy.
Okay, Mr. President, thank you very much. I want to say thank you to the panelists, Vanessa Narain, Stacey Carmichael James, and Alexis Rodney. My name is Sean Samru. Thank you, Mr. President. We enjoyed this conversation, and we look forward to doing this again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.